Hey everyone, welcome back to Noctirn. Tonight's stories are about something investigators once had, but could not fully use: DNA. In one case, a killer spent years taunting police, convinced he had disappeared beyond their reach. In another, a murderer blended into ordinary life for more than 2 decades, until detectives found themselves watching a school event and waiting for something as small as a piece of chewing gum. April Tinsley and Christy Mirack were killed years apart in different places, under very different circumstances. But both cases eventually came down to the same unsettling idea. The evidence had been there almost from the beginning. It simply had to survive long enough for science to catch up. And when it finally did, investigators no longer needed the killer to volunteer his DNA, confess, or even appear in a criminal database. A distant relative could be enough. A discarded object could be enough. A mistake made years later could be enough. Tonight, we're looking at 2 cases that seem to have gone cold for good until the past became readable in a way it never had before. And for the men responsible, that realization came far too late. In the spring of 2004, a girl in Fort Wayne, Indiana walked out to her bicycle and found a plastic bag attached to it. Inside was a handwritten note. The writer said he had been watching her. He described what he wanted to do to her. Then, almost casually, he mentioned a murder that had terrified the city 16 years earlier. April Tinsley. There was something else in the bag, a used condom. At first, the note could have been dismissed as the work of a sick copycat, exploiting an old tragedy to frighten children. But when the laboratory tested what he had left behind, the result changed everything. The man writing those notes was not pretending to be April's killer. He was April's killer. On April 1st, 1988, 8-year-old April Tinsley disappeared while walking through her neighborhood. She had been outside playing with friends. Then she was gone. For 3 days, Fort Wayne searched for her. Her body was found in a ditch outside the city. Investigators recovered biological evidence from her clothing, evidence belonging to an unknown man. In 1988, that sample was like a locked door. Police knew the killer had left part of himself behind. They simply did not yet have the key. 2 years later, someone wrote a message on a barn near the area where April had been found. The writer claimed responsibility, referred to April's missing shoe, and promised to kill again. That message told investigators 2 things. The killer had returned. He wanted them to know it. But there was no fingerprint, no witness, no name. Only a voice written on wood. Then the voice disappeared for 14 years. When it returned in 2004, it returned to children. 4 notes were left at homes around Fort Wayne, several attached to bicycles belonging to young girls. The bags contained threats, photographs, and used condoms. He could approach their homes, watch them, and disappear unseen. But the condoms carried DNA, and that DNA matched the unknown male profile preserved from April's clothing. Now police knew the same person had committed the murder, written the taunts, and targeted the girls. They entered the profile into criminal databases. No match. The answer existed in his DNA, but the man remained invisible. Years passed. The notes stopped. For the families who had received them, that silence was not reassuring. It meant the man who knew where their daughters lived had simply chosen not to speak. And somewhere near Fort Wayne, he was getting older, going to stores, driving familiar roads, and passing people who had seen April's face on television. Living an ordinary life while his DNA waited in an evidence room. Then, in 2018, investigators tried something different. Instead of searching for the killer, genetic genealogists searched for his relatives. The DNA matched distant relatives who had uploaded information for family history research. Those connections let investigators build a family tree. Branch by branch, the possibilities narrowed. The killer was likely one of two brothers. One was a 59-year-old man named John D. Miller. He lived in Grable, not far from Fort Wayne. But a family tree could only point toward him. Police still needed something that came directly from his body. So they watched his home. They waited for him to throw something away. And eventually, mixed in with his trash, investigators found used condoms. The same kind of evidence the killer had once chosen to leave as a taunt. The laboratory compared the DNA, first to the condoms left near the bicycles in 2004, then to the sample taken from April's clothing in 1988. It was the same man. For 30 years, the case had contained three versions of him: the murderer, the writer, and the quiet man living a short drive away. Now, they had finally become one person. Detectives approached Miller outside his home in July 2018 and asked him to come with them. During the interview, he admitted abducting April, taking her to his trailer, and killing her because he feared she would identify him. The mystery did not end with a chase. It ended in an interview room, with an aging man realizing that evidence he had left decades earlier had finally learned his name. Miller pleaded guilty and received an 80-year prison sentence. He would never leave prison. In September 2025, 7 years into that sentence, Miller died at 66. For years, he had controlled the story. He decided when to write, when to threaten, when to disappear into silence. He believed the bags proved he could reach children without being caught. But every time he returned to frighten the city, he left behind another piece of the truth. And in the end, the most disturbing evidence in the case became the most fitting. The same thing he used to tell police, "You still can't find me," was the thing that finally answered, "There you are." On May 31, 2018, an elementary school in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, held an evening event. Music rolled through the gym, children danced while parents filmed from the walls, teachers cleared paper cups from tables. A local DJ moved from one song to the next. The night ended exactly as planned. Families went home, the lights came up, equipment was packed away. But before the gym emptied, two objects were quietly removed from the trash: a water bottle and a piece of chewing gum. Within weeks, they would solve a murder that had waited 26 years for a name. 4 days before Christmas in 1992, 25-year-old Christy Mirack was preparing for work. She taught 6th grade at Roarstown Elementary School. Gifts for her students and coworkers were ready. Her coat and gloves were already on. Her roommate left shortly after 7. Christy should have followed before 7:45. Between 7:10 and 7:20, neighbors heard a single scream. Then the house went quiet. When Christy failed to arrive at school, her principal called repeatedly, then drove to her home. Her car was still outside. its windows covered in ice. The front door stood slightly open. Inside, he found Christy on the living room floor. She had been beaten, strangled, and sexually assaulted, only minutes before she was supposed to leave for work. The room showed that she had fought. Furniture had shifted. Scuff marks crossed the floor. A wooden cutting board lay near her body. And beneath the violence, investigators found something the killer could not take back: biological evidence. In 1992, the DNA could eliminate suspects, but it could not identify a man absent from police databases. Detectives questioned the people around Christy. Her principal was cleared. A man she had been seeing was cleared. Other names surfaced, were tested, and disappeared. The evidence kept proving who had not killed her. It never said who had. Years passed. Christy's family kept her face visible. Her brother paid for a billboard beside the highway. Investigators preserved the DNA and waited for science to catch up. In 2017, a laboratory used the profile to estimate the killer's ancestry and physical features. A composite image was released. Tips arrived. None led to him. Then investigators changed the question. Instead of asking whether the killer was already in a police database, they asked whether anyone related to him had searched for their family history. The search did not produce a suspect. It produced distant relatives. Investigators compared records, ages, addresses, and locations, removing names that could not fit. Wrong age, wrong location, wrong ancestry. Until the list became small enough to follow. One candidate had lived only a few miles from Christy's home. He had never appeared in the original investigation. Police began watching him, waiting for something he had touched and no longer wanted. That brings us back to the school gym, the final song, the families leaving, the water bottle and gum dropped into the trash. The man behind the music was Raymond Charles Rowe. Locally, he was known as DJ Freeze. The laboratory compared his discarded DNA with the evidence preserved from Christy's body and the carpet beneath her. It matched. The person entertaining children at a school event was the man investigators had searched for since 1992. Rowe was arrested in June 2018. At the time of the murder, he lived roughly 4 miles from Christy's home. Investigators never publicly established why he went there or whether they knew each other. Sexual violence was part of the attack, but it did not explain what brought him to Christy's door that morning. Rowe later told defense investigators that he had snapped. But that word explained almost nothing. It described a moment, not a motive. It did not explain why he was there, what happened before the attack, or why a young teacher preparing Christmas gifts became his victim. In court, Christy's brother asked Rowe the question the DNA could never answer. Why? Rowe gave him no meaningful explanation. In January 2019, Rowe pleaded guilty to murder, rape, and related crimes. He received life in prison without parole, followed by another 60 to 120 years. He apologized to Christy's family. But an apology was not an answer. For 26 years, he had lived publicly. He played weddings, school dances, family celebrations. He built a career around being remembered as the man who kept the room moving. Then one night, in a gym filled with children and parents, he threw away 2 ordinary things: a bottle, a piece of gum. He believed the party was over. For Christy Mirack's family, it was the moment the silence finally broke. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to Noctirn for more true cases, disappearances, and unsolved mysteries. You can also leave a like to help support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.